Hello and welcome! .NET 6 and Visual Studio 2022 is now available, and what is a better time to test this already and build a .NET 6 web API. So I would say we'll do this together now. I didn't really have a look into it, just a tiny glimpse, so I have no script, nothing at all. So I would say we just start. But first, if you like this video and you learned something, I would really appreciate it if you click the like button, maybe even subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate that. Maybe you also want to subscribe to my newsletter. I promise I won't spam you. Maybe I write an email once a month, but with that you will get more information, deep information about upcoming YouTube videos, online courses, and so on. And thank you so much to everybody buying me some coffee. It just tastes so great, and yeah, helps me to stay awake when my little boy is asleep, and then I can make all these videos. All right, anyways, let's start Visual Studio. You can see it here, Visual Studio 2022. It's just maybe a week, yeah, 10 days. I think 10 days now that we got this new IDE, and we start by creating a new project. And you can see it here. I just tested this a little bit. Of course, we can create Blazor web apps. I really love Blazor, so I do this a lot. And then here we've got this template, ASP.NET Core Web API. So if you only want to create a simple web API, maybe you can look for web API, and here it is. It's still called Core, so this name is still used internally, a project template for creating an ASP.NET Core application with an example controller for a RESTful HTTP service. This is what we want to do. Let's test this. Well, I like superheroes, so superhero API, and the rest is okay, I guess. .NET 6, this is the one we want. We configure this for HTTP, that's nice. We could also enable Docker, but we don't need that. Yes, we use controllers. We will not use the new minimal API, but we will also enable Open API support. So with that, we get Swagger support and can already test our web API. All right, let's create this thing. And as almost always, we get an example application here. Also with Blazor, for instance, we also get the weather forecast model here. So this is used to demonstrate the web API. We've got our controllers already. So this is the weather forecast controller here. And we also get a get method. I think important is here the launch settings JSON as well. So with that, we see this profile, Superhero API. And when we start the app, then here you can see the profile, Superhero API. When we click here, we started with debugging, but I don't want that now. I want to start this without debugging, and then it will go to this URL here, HTTPS localhost 7276 is the port, and the launch URL is Swagger, so we already get access to the Swagger UI, so we can test the API directly. And what else? We've got the app settings JSON. For now, not interesting. And this is now really new in .NET 6. Instead of .NET 5, we only get the program CS file here, not the startup CS anymore. This thing is gone, so we only have the program CS. And also interesting here, we have no namespace. The curly braces are gone somehow. And we do not have the configure services method and the configure method. Everything is now done in here in the program CS. All right, that's okay. And of course, it helps building minimal APIs, because when you want to build a minimal API, if you want me to make a video about that, please tell me that in the comments. Then you would add all your methods here in the program CS. Well, at least you can do that. But we don't. We will kind of build a typical web API, old school, I know. But as you can see here, we register some services, add controllers. This thing here is necessary for Swagger. Here then our app is built, and also here only in development mode we will use Swagger for our API. Okay, then we have HTTPS redirection, that's great. Authorization, all that already there, and then in the end, app run. That's nice. Again, we've got our model here. The weather forecast consists of a date, temperature, Celsius and Fahrenheit, and the summary. And the controller. Now this thing, of course, is interesting if you're absolutely new to web API controllers, let me go through this real quick. We inherit from controller base. As it says here, a base class for an MVC controller without view support. We don't need view support. If we wanted to get view support, we can inherit from controller. That's that. And when we have a look here, I'm trying, yeah, I press control and then the left mouse button. With that, we get a bunch of stuff here. We get the actual HTTP request here, the response. Very important sometimes when we use authentication, the user here with the claims principal. With that, we can read the claims and the roles and so on. And all the stuff we want to return, like an OK result, for instance. This would be then the status code 200 and so on. So lots of stuff. And then also important are these two attributes. With the API controller, this thing indicates data type and all derived types are used to serve HTTP API responses. So we want to use a controller here, and this is what we have to do. And down here, then the route specifies an attribute route on the controller. Now what you can see here in these brackets, this is a convention, and this means that the route will be the name of the controller. So everything that comes before controller. So weather forecast. And then we've got some summaries. Okay, an array of summaries. We've got the logger, won't dive into that here, but we also get a constructor where you can already see dependency injection in action. So the logger here is injected, and there's also a private field created for that. Well, let's forget that for a moment, because the important part now, or the really interesting part now, is already this get method here. And as you can see, we use this HTTP get attribute. You don't have to use it, but for Swagger, you do have to use it. Meaning, if you create a method called get anything, so get weather forecasts, get the weather, get whatever, get the superheroes, we will build that in a second, then the web API knows that this is a get method, meaning that we wanted to use the HTTP request method get, all right? So this is important, but if you want to see a documentation, an API documentation with the help of Swagger, then you would need to declare this as HTTP get. So let's use the attribute here. And then, well, this is the logic of the controller method. In essence, we're creating random weather forecasts and return them. All right, so this is an overview, I'd say, of this example application, and we can already run this. And Chrome starts, great. And we already see Swagger here. These are the schemas, meaning this is our model we have seen. And this is our get method here. So we can open it. We can see an example value. And this is also, yeah, that's crucial here. This is important to point out. We can only see the example value because we're telling this function that it returns an enumerable of weather forecasts. And with this weather forecast, then with this model, Swagger knows what to expect here, and then we can also display the schema here. All right, and then we can already try it out and hit execute. You see, this is the URL here, and we get 5 forecasts back from the service. All right, now it's important to mention that name here does not mean that this is the route of this function. When we remove this, trying to remove it and save this and maybe restart the application here. Did another video about the hot reload, which is not always working as expected. I know I have to rebuild the app here. This is totally fine. But you know, just as on a side note, before with .NET 5 and the .NET Watch command, if you started your app from the CLI, then it would rebuild your application by itself. And here now we have to do it by ourselves. So it does not always work automatically, but still, I think this is rebuilt and we have the same method here, but we can also give this thing a route, meaning we've got this attribute here as well. Remember, this is also mentioned here above the controller class. And here we can call this, I don't know, let's just call this weather. And then the route is different. Oh, it rebuilds. Okay, it's nice. Forget what I said. Everything works. Perfect. And so this is now the new route. And you do not have to use two routes here, or two attributes here. We can also put this thing up here. And this also works. Okay, to see the change, let's call it weather 1. Great. Okay, this is amazing. Hot reload at its best. And you can see we can try this out, hit execute, and it works. All right. So this is the example application. And now let's build a superhero API. Let me just take a sip of my coffee. Jesus, my voice is, I'm losing my voice. All right, thanks for the coffee. Okay, let's first create a new model, I'd say. So right click the project and then add a new class. And that'll be our superhero. And there it is. Okay, my machine is kind of slow today. And let's add some properties. Now, if you're wondering what are these purple lines here, this simply means hot reload does not work. With that, we have to restart the application. And again, that's totally fine. This is how it worked before with .NET 5. So let's do that again with .NET 6. We add some properties, maybe an ID. Also, let's add a name, which is string empty. You see the great IntelliCode here. This is amazing. Suggesting some stuff. And also then the first name, also string empty, and another string, which would be the last name, string empty. And let's also add a place. Could be place of birth, I don't know, or where they live now. Yeah, almost. All right, place. Let's call this place. Okay, let's save that now. You can see it here now, the hot reload. I activated hot reload on save, on file save, and now it's telling us that we have to rebuild the application. That's correct. And for this session in Visual Studio 2020 new, we can just remember that we want to rebuild our app with all the changes when we change something and hot reload itself is not working. So the big difference in essence is with hot reload, you don't have to rebuild and restart or reload your application. You can just stay on the same page and magically the page changes, as we just saw with Swagger. We saw the changing URL, the changing route, but with that we added a new model. So this is a root edit. This is the proper term, I guess, the root edit. We are really root developers, so we have to rebuild our application. Okay, anyways, we've got our superhero here. Nothing should change here. We do not see the schema. Swagger has no idea what's going on for now, but now we will create a new controller. Right click, add, and then not a new item, simply hit controller. And please go to API here. And then we got 3 options. The API controller with actions using Entity Framework. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Not so fast. Not Entity Framework yet. Not even read-write actions, in my opinion. Then you would already get the code for the get, post, put, and delete HTTP request methods that we will use here. But I would say for learning purposes, and even if you know this stuff already, I prefer building an empty controller. Let's click add, and then we give this thing a name, superhero controller, build it, and there we are. You can see the route now is a bit different. That's totally up to you. Do you want to use the API string or not? I like it. That way I know that that's the API. And apart from that, we also see the API controller attribute and the controller base class here. And that's everything. So now if you need a constructor, you have to build your constructor, your get methods, and so on. Now when we save this, it is already saved. It's rebuilt, nothing changes here. But now let's add a get method. So right away, we add the attribute HTTP GET, and now I want to create an asynchronous method, so a public async task, and you see the suggestion here already, like this word, a real tongue twister, yeah, I think it's tongue twister. And it is returning an iAction result. This is different, right? It is an iAction result, and what is an iAction result? Defines a contract that represents the result of an action method. Now you know, right? Well, let's create something here for now. With the get method, we will return a list of superheroes. So let's create this here really quick. New list of superhero, like that, and maybe we can use the object initializer to already add a new hero here. So new superhero, ID1, nice. Name would be, what's your favorite hero? Come on, write it down in the comments. I really like this guy. And with that, we've got Peter. And then also Parker. And the place, I guess, is New York City. And maybe we can format this a bit differently. Let's put this in new lines. Come on, this is still not working. This is a shame. Control K, D, also not working. Alt Shift and F, not working. Okay, then let's do this by ourselves. And yeah, now we've got a list with one superhero. And here now we return not the heroes, we return OK, and then the heroes. Like that. And with that, we are returning a status code 200, which means, you can read it here, status 200 OK. This means everything went fine. If something went wrong, we can change the status code. For instance, we can also send a bad request. And this would result in a 400, sorry, and this is a 400. And what about the one that everybody knows, even the people that don't write code, 404 not found, for instance. So these are the status codes, and with this information, of course, the client can do something. But in here now, we simply return OK heroes. That's that. And I would say let's test this already. We hit Control S, and here is our new API, the superhero API. But as you can see, it's not appearing here in the schemas. Now, why is that? When we open the superhero here, we don't see any example values. Well, that's because of the return type. It's just a generic iAction result. Now, if you want to see the model in the Swagger UI, then you have to change that. And instead of just returning the interface here or using the interface, we return an action result and give this action result also a type. And this would be a list of superheroes, like that, and we save that now. And we've got some errors here. Yes, the last angle bracket was missing. Okay, now save this thing, rebuild it, and now you can see this is our model. We see an example value. Nice. We can try this, hit execute. And voila, there's Spider-Man. Isn't that nice? This is so great. Almost what time was it? 20 minutes? Okay, 20 minutes because I talk too much. But I mean, you can build this in 5 minutes. .NET 6 Visual Studio 2022. 5 minutes and you're done with your first web API GET call. All right, and now the next thing would be the post call, meaning creating a superhero. Now, before we do that, let's move our heroes here. Cut them and put them here on top of our controller, and let's make this a private static list of superheroes so that we have access to them from everywhere. That's the correct syntax here. All right. So now with that, again, we can save this, of course, and have a quick look in Swagger. This should still work. We open the method and then try it out, and there we are. And now post. So creating a new superhero. By the way, short side note, maybe if you already want to dive really deep with a web API in .NET 6 and entity framework, SQL Server, relationships, and so on, then maybe you want to check out the video description below. There's a link to the Jumpstart course, or maybe even better, you may want to subscribe to the newsletter where I will tell you right in your inbox when I start my own course platform where you get access to all my courses for a fraction of the price. So just as a side note, if you want to be the first to know when this thing goes live, then maybe subscribe to my newsletter and then you will get access to it. Okay, now with that a little commercial out of the way, let's create a post method. It looks almost the same. So let's say we want to use the post HTTP request method now. For that, we use the HTTP post attribute here. And then let's copy this. And what we will return again is the list of superheroes, because I want to return all the superheroes then. But we call this now, let's say, add hero. Name doesn't really matter in this case because we defined the attribute here, but this thing now gets a request object, and well, let's use a superhero. Let's just call it hero. And here now, since we got our hero list in the controller, we do exactly that. What is suggested here by IntelliCode now, heroes add hero, and in the end we return the hero. This should already be it. Of course, there are some details like the route. You can change the route, and we have to change it if we have more post methods here in this controller. And also what we could do is add this little attribute here from body, but since we're using a complex type here in the parameter, it's not an integer, not a string, then we don't need this, because our web API will assume that this object comes within the request body anyways. So this is totally fine. We save this and let's go to Swagger now. There it is already. Again, hot reload at its best. We see the post method, and here you can also see the example value. We can, so the example value for the request, that's important. You see the request body here. And again, this is the same object in essence. And here is then the result example. Let's try this out. And this is the nice thing of Swagger, one of the nice things. It already suggests a request body here. So we see ID 0, the name, and so on. So yeah, in essence, we can just use this, hit execute, and you're getting an error. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. Okay, let's see. I don't know what's wrong here, but as I already mentioned in my other hot reload video, it could be the case that we have to restart the app manually. Not sure why, but it's restarted now. Try it out. Execute. And now it works. Of course, the ID is nonsense here. ID 0 in this case, the strings and so on. But you see that this works now. And just for fun, let's use a real hero now. ID 2, name would be Iron Man, for instance. Tony Stark. And the place is Long Island. Just hit execute, and there now we've got the 3 heroes. What happens if we reload this? This is the post method. We get the 4th one, but of course when we restart the application, the heroes are gone. We do not store this persistently in a database. So when we now get our heroes, it's only Spider-Man now. Okay, so sorry for the confusion. That's really important to know with the new hot reload. Sometimes it does not really recognize all the changes. It shows you an error where there is no error. It told us that there's a null reference exception. I don't know, maybe it did not see the list here. I have no idea what was going on. All right, now anyways, this is the post method. Now what we can also do is we can, before we add a put and a delete, get a single hero. So we can do the following. Just add Tony Stark here so that he is available all the time with ID 2. And we add Tony Stark. This is, Jesus, this is Iron Man. Of course, Tony Stark, and then he lives on Long Island. Formatting does not work again, but still, now we've got 2 heroes, and now let's say we want to get a single one. So not all the heroes, but a single one. So we again add a get method here. Return type is now only one superhero, and we can also call this get, but we will add an ID as a parameter. What's going on here? Of course. Nope. Close this. Now it works. And we return now heroes. Or let's try something else. We can now say our hero is from heroes. Yeah, why not? With this ID here. Or we use the find method. We can also do this, where we just say with a lambda expression the hero with the given ID. But I think with the find method we can also just do it like that. No, doesn't. Okay. So let's do it like that. And then if the hero is null, in this case, we really return a bad request. And we can also send a message with that. For instance, hero not found. But otherwise, if we find the hero, we simply return it. God, yeah, Jesus. All right, and now we are not done with that. We have a parameter here, and we have to add it here in the route as well. And we can simply do it like that with the curly braces. This is the parameter now. Should be the same name, ID and ID. And now this works. There's our new method, superhero. This is the example result. We can try this. Let's add 1, for instance, and we get Spider-Man. Perfect. Let's add ID 2, hit execute. Hero not found. This is interesting because we added ID 2 here. Let's restart the app again manually. There it is. And now we get Tony Stark. See, we have to restart our app sometimes. But now this is what I wanted to show you with ID 3. Now we get the response status 400. It's a bad request. And we get the message hero not found. And if we want to get all our heroes, try this out, hit execute. We get both of them. All right, great. So this works. We can add heroes. We can get all the heroes. We can get a single hero. And now let's change a hero, for instance. And for that, this is an HTTP put. And I am really lazy, so I copy this again. Now the thing is, we can do it both ways. Either we just accept that we use a superhero object as a parameter. Let's change that to update hero. And we grab the ID then from this object and search for the specific hero in our list. Or we can also add a second parameter with the ID. Up to you how you want to do it. Let's do it like that in this case. And yeah, return the complete list again. So first we try to find it, and this is why we can copy this thing here, and actually you can also copy this. Let's make this really quick and dirty. So this is our hero. Let's call this request maybe. And then we look at the request ID. So this is the first thing. And this is then the hero we've got from our list, but now we want to override the properties, right? And we have to do this by ourselves. There are options to do it in another way. For instance, you can use AutoMapper and define one time how the updating would work. But in this really quick course or tutorial, let's just override this manually. We do not override the ID, of course. So what we can do now is here we say the name of the hero, for instance, is now the request name. The first name is this first name, last name is the last name, and the place is the place. Okay, so this is what we want to do actually in our list. We want to change all these properties, and in the end we return our heroes. So let's save that. Just to be sure, let's just restart our app. There's our put method. Try it out. And now let's say I wanna call Spider-Man Amazing Spider-Man, like that. Now the bad thing is that first name, last name, and place would be overwritten as well. Let's just leave it at that. That's not in the database, of course. So we hit execute, and there's our result. You see, Amazing Spider-Man is now called string string, and he lives in string. So this is the put method. I guess this already works. Of course, when we do this with Entity Framework in a database, we have to change this a little bit. We have to make the call to the database, get the hero, make the changes, and then save them back to the database. But in essence, it looks quite similar. All right, and now the last thing already is the delete. For that, we use HTTP delete. Again, we can copy. Yeah, let's copy this thing here. And I forgot the parameter, so HTTP delete with the ID. We call this delete, and we return a list of superheroes. And again, we find the hero. If it's not available, then we display this message here. But otherwise, we say heroes remove hero, and then in the end, we return all our heroes. And again, we restart this thing. There we are. And you can see here, maybe I did not mention this, these are the HTTP request methods here, get, post, put, and delete. And with the put, for instance, when we call this thing, when we try this and hit execute, you can see here also with the curl statement here that the put method is really used, and the request URL is this thing here. Now we get a hero not found. That's great because we haven't tested this yet. But now let's try to delete a hero. What about ID3 first? There it is. Hero not found. Great, that's what I wanted. And now let's remove Tony Stark. Hit execute. This is the response body. So this is not correct. Why do we get this hero back? Oh, I returned the hero. Okay, that's wrong, of course. So let's try that again. Rebuild it. We have all our heroes, I hope. Yep, that's correct. And now here, let's try this. Execute. And now only Spider-Man is left. And of course here, when we get all our heroes, it's the same result. All right, and that is it. This is how you do this. This is how you implement the first 4 controller or 5 calls in your web API controller. We've got the get by ID in essence, where we get a single hero. We've got a get for all the heroes, add a hero with post, update with put, and delete it again with, well, HTTP delete. All right, and you know what? Because I'm in a very good mood, I would say we also add Entity Framework now with a SQL Server database. Now, how would this work? We need a data context for that, so let's do that real quick. Again, I go much deeper and explain more in the course, but maybe if you just want to get started here and you know, you're looking for tutorials or you don't want to read stuff and you don't have much time, just keep watching, and I think this will give you a good start regarding Web API and now even Entity Framework with .NET 6 and Visual Studio 2022. So back to Visual Studio now. The way I do this usually is I would add a new folder. And by the way, when I say how I do this usually, in the course as well, or in the courses, where we use a couple of web APIs, you would not add the whole logic to the controllers here. You would use services with the repository pattern where you would then add a constructor in the controller, inject the service there, and then this logic here to find the heroes, update them, and so on would be then in the services. But for now, I think this is okay. This is the first step in the web API. So data now, and here let's add a new class, and we call this class the DataContext. So this will be the context of our database, and we have to inherit from a DB context. And for that now, we have to install the package Microsoft Entity Framework Core. Yep. And additionally, it's getting a bit more complicated now. We have to add some more packages now to be absolutely sure. Yeah, let's just stop the app from running. So we just close this window here, and then we manage our NuGet packages. And in here now, we've got Microsoft. Yeah, there's already the suggestion. So Entity Framework Core Design, we need this for our migration because we will now use code first migration. Surprise. So let's install this thing. And then we will use a SQL Server Express database. And for that, we also need this package here, Entity Framework Core SQL Server. That's the one. Install it. Okay, I accept. All right, you see all the warnings here because we don't use asynchronous methods, but we will do that when we use Entity Framework in a sec. Go away. Jesus. Okay, now it's gone. And now let's have a quick look in our project file here. Yeah, Entity Framework Core, Design, and SQL Server. Everything is here. This is the swashbuckle thing is for Swagger. And now we've got our data context. First thing now is a connection string. We have to add a connection string, meaning this will be the string how we connect to our SQL Server database then. If you're wondering, whoa, this is way too fast. SQL Server, I don't have SQL Server. Well, I can help you out. Let's go to Google and maybe search for SQL Server Express. And well, this is the German link. Don't know why. This is the one I was looking for. Try SQL Server. And here, Express. Please download this thing. And additionally, you can also download the SQL Server Management Studio. This is what I use. There it is. And here you can download this thing. It's a great tool to display your database. Of course, we can do this as well with Visual Studio itself, but I just like it that way. So with that out of the way, let's add our connection string. For that, we add a new section here, connection strings. And now typically you would call the first connection string here the default connection. And if you have installed SQL Server Express, it looks kind of like that, server. And if you installed it locally, then this would be server localhost, SQL Express. Then we've got the database name. Let's call this superhero DB maybe. And then the last thing, trusted connection true. All right, so this is now the connection string here, localhost SQL Express, database superhero DB, and trusted connections set to true. And now with that, we can work. Next step, before we go to the data context here, we have to install Entity Framework actually. So to install Entity Framework, well, you can check if you have already installed it. Maybe it is. So let's just enter in the Package Manager console. By the way, if it's not open, you can get it from View, Other Windows, and then Package Manager console. And then you enter .NET EF. And as you can see, I've got Entity Framework Core.NET Command Line Tools 6.0.0 installed. If this is not the case for you, then you simply do the following: .NET tool install -- global and then .NET -ef. So .NET tool install -- global .NET -ef. If you have an older version installed, just use uninstall and then use install again. And if I now hit return, it's telling me it's already installed. Okay, that's correct. In your case, maybe it's not, and then you would see the actual version of .NET Entity Framework if you hit again .NET EF. All right, so with that now out of the way, we can finally move on with our data context. So the data context, again, this is important maybe. Let's read this together real quick. A DB context instance represents a session with the database and can be used to query and save instances of your entities. The DB context is a combination of the unit of work and repository pattern. So similar to the thing I already told you with the services that we will use in the courses, we will use the repository pattern there. This means, we will see this in a second, the superhero controller will inject this context here, and then we are able to access the superheroes from the database. But to be able to do this, first we need a constructor here. And this looks like that. Public data context. And this thing gets a parameter of type DB context options with our data context. We call this options. And we also have to use the base constructor here with our options. So this is the constructor. And then, since we will use code first migration and we want to see a representation of our superheroes in the database, we use, or we have to add a DB set. This is a property, so you can use the built-in snippet here, prop, hit tab twice, and then this is a DB set of type superhero. And we call this thing, and this is the name of the table that we will see in the database. Usually you just pluralize the name of your model. So we would add superheroes like that. Okay, and that's it. This is our data context. But after that, we also have to register this thing. So we move to our program CS. Before it was in the startup CS. Now it's here. And maybe let's do this here before all the Swagger stuff. We write builder, then services, like that, and then add DB context. We use our data context. And of course, we need a reference here using superhero API data. And what we can already do, this is also new in C#10, lots of new stuff actually. We can make this a global using, because maybe, well, not maybe, we will need the data context in the superhero controller as well. And maybe we don't want to add the using directive every single time. We will add more controller services, whatever. So we can just define this globally, and then we won't have to use or add another using directive in the superhero controller. All right, so builder, services, add DB context. And now this thing gets options. And let's put this in a new line. And in here now, we configure our SQL Server, or we tell this data context that we use SQL Server, so options, and then this method here, use use SQL Server. Need another reference here. All right, let's add this globally as well. Almost global. And then configuration. Wait, this was .NET 5. Here we also need the builder. Now we got the configuration. And from that, get connection string. And this would be our default connection. One parenthesis is missing. And add the semicolon. And now this should be it. All right, so this is the configuration. And now finally, let's save everything. Make sure that the app is stopped because now we will use code first migration. Finally. So let's clear the screen here. And now we add this with, or let me show you this one more time with .NET EF. You see the version and also the available commands, database, DB-context, and migrations. We need migrations for our migrations and also database to update the database then. So let's use .NET EF migrations and then we add one. And well, the name then is up to you. This is the initial migration. So usually you would call this initial or create initial, something like that. Hit return and there was no project found. Why is that? Well, we have to be in the server directory. So let's go to Superhero API and then, oh no, Jesus, I'm doing lots of stuff with Blazor WebAssembly ASP.NET Core hosted. This is already the correct directory. We are now in our project directory, not the solution directory, the actual project directory, Superhero API. And now this should work. So .NET EF migrations, add create initial. Now Entity Framework is trying to build this, or the .NET Framework. Hope this works. Yep, build succeeded. And we've got a migration file. There it is. This is not important for us. This is important for us. We create the table. See that? This is our superheroes table. We've got the ID, which is already the primary key here. And this then is automatically increased when we add a new superhero. We got the name, first name, last name, place, and so on. So this is done in the up method, and in the down method, you would just drop this table. And now we can use .NET EF database update. Notice this is the update command. Even if we do not have the database yet, it will create the database now. So .NET EF database update it is. And then you will see what Entity Framework is going to do. Lots of stuff. And where is it? Here you can see create database Superhero DB. It creates a table EF migrations history. This is just for Entity Framework, not interesting for us, at least for now. And then here you can see create table superheroes. And now let's open the SQL Server Management Studio. There it is. We connect to the database. We open our databases. Blazor e-commerce is from my e-commerce course I'm currently recording, but I thought this is also interesting with the Superhero DB for you guys on YouTube. So let's also open the tables here. This is our table. Columns, great. And we can right click the table, edit top 200 rows, and we do not see any rows. Well, this is sad, of course, but we can add a hero here as well. So the name, for instance, should be again Spider-Man. First name is Peter, last name Parker, and the place is New York, or let's call this New York City. And now we've got a superhero, and now we want to get this hero here and not the mock heroes from our controller. So let's change that real quick. As already mentioned, first we need a constructor. So let's add it here with CTOR and tab. We can add it, and then we inject the data context. You see now it already knows the data context without adding the using directive. And then we use control and period, or you use the light bulb here, this quick fix menu, to create and assign the field data context. Also, I've got to mention here, you see this underscore data context. Well, let's call this context. I think that's better. This might not be the case for you. This is what I have configured. In your case, you would see something like this context, and here the underscore would be gone. I configured this with Visual Studio. Maybe I can show you real quick. Options, and then text editor, C#, code style, formatting, and here it's no, not formatting, it's naming. That's what I was looking for. And here you can configure this. You can manage your naming styles, and this is what I added. You can add simply one more. I named this underscore field name. The required prefix then is the underscore with camel case name. And with that then you can add a new one here. So simply add, click the plus button, and then for all the private fields, you choose field name and then as a suggestion, and then you're good to go. Okay, that's that. Now we got our context. And now this is pretty simple. Instead of just returning our heroes here, in the get method, we return await and then context. And with that, we get access to our superheroes. And that's already it. We just add the toList async method here. And we're done. Now we're getting the heroes from our database. So let's start the application. There it is. Let's see. Call the get method, try it out. And we get the Spider-Man. Peter Parker is here, and you really see this. How can I prove this to you? Well, let's remove this guy here simply. And now try this again. Again, we see Spider-Man. Great. So that's that. And now what about getting a single one? To do that, we again use our context. And this is then superheroes. Find. And again, this should be it already. But we have to use the async one. And here we now only add the ID. So this is a different method now. And this is where I tried to, see, I'm a bit confused myself. This is how you get it with Entity Framework. So we access the context, the superheroes, and with find async now we just add the ID. So it is looking for the primary key here that is equal to that given ID here. So again, let's save this. And I have some trust issues here, so let's restart the app. There we are. Get this one. Try it out. Now ID2 shouldn't be available. Not found. And what about ID1? Works. Great. You see how fast this really is. And now adding a hero, almost the same. We call context and then superheroes, add hero, and after that await context save changes async. Because with this adds method here, we changed something in our table, in our database table, and we have to save this change, and that's what we call context save changes async. And with OK heroes, that's not correct. We want to return all our heroes, so await context superheroes to list async then. All right, and then, well, let's just test this, restart the app again. Let's do this again. Okay. So post. Now we've got this thingy here. Let's have a quick look again in the database. We only have Spider-Man, so let's add Tony Stark now. Try this out. ID can be missing now. Not Tony Stark, Jesus. Every time. Iron Man. Tony Stark, and then Long Island. Execute. And now we got 2. And let's have a quick look here. Right click, execute SQL. There's Iron Man. Yeah, this works. This is nice. And now, real quick, updating the hero. Again, we can copy this actually. So, you know, maybe we should refactor this, but not today. So this is our request, and here we want to get the request ID, and we can also call this DB hero because now this is our database hero. And we have to save these changes again. So context, wait a sec, await, context, save changes async. That's what I wanted. So we set, yeah, we override everything in essence. And then we return all our heroes again. Let's save this. Now let's just trust Visual Studio here. We go back. This is our put method. But first let me get the object so I don't have to type this again. This is our Spider-Man. And now in the put method, I want to try this. Again, our Spider-Man, but now I want to call him Amazing Spider-Man again. Now it's important to also send the ID because this is how we get the hero. And now let's just execute it. And there it is. This is Amazing Spider-Man. And when we have a look in the database, there's Amazing Spider-Man. Updated. Great. So this worked as well. And the last thing we have to do is the remove function or the delete function. Again, we copy this here and paste it here. All right. And now we say context superheroes remove, and then this would be our database hero again, like that. And after that, again, we say await context save changes async, and we return this here. All right. And now we can finally also remove this thing. Okay. Save that. This is the delete. Go to Swagger. And again, we've got 2 heroes here, Iron Man and Spider-Man. And let's try to remove Iron Man now. Hit execute. We only get Spider-Man back. And the same for the database. All right, that's it. Let me just put this to GitHub, push this to GitHub. So we create the Git repository. Superhero API. Let's also call this .NET 6. Yeah. I think this is great. We make this public, then I create and push this, and then we're done. All right, so this is it. I hope you learned something, and it's not so bad. It wasn't so bad with all the errors that happened. I think it's great to see this sometimes. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. Thank you very much for that. Maybe consider subscribing to my channel. Really makes a difference. Thank you for that. Again, if you want to dive deeper, consider subscribing to my newsletter because something big is coming. I've got some courses already. If you can't wait, just check them out or just check out my YouTube channel. There's also lots of content regarding .NET and Blazor and different stuff. So maybe the newsletter. And the last thing, again, thank you so much for buying me some coffee. Maybe you want to buy me some coffee too. I love you guys. It really helps making all these videos taste even better with all your support. Okay, again, I hope this was some value for you. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you see you next time. Take care and happy coding.